Hello everybody, welcome to this short video in which we will overview the integration between TrapX DeceptionGrid and Carbon Black CB response. The use case is really simple. TrapX, the leading provider of deception technology, is able to spin traps throughout the network and other types of deceptive elements. When an attacker touches any of those deceptive elements, those decoys, an alert is being generated, recording highly accurate telemetry regarding attacker activity. This information is seamlessly transferred to Carbon Black to invoke response. In the case of the use case we will preview today, that response will be to quarantine the infected device. In the next few minutes, I will show how easy it is to set up the integration, run a mock attack against the system in order to show how an automatic block action can be invoked. We're going to start our demo in the TrapX Security Operation Console. This is the centralized console that manages anything that is included within the world of DeceptionGrid, all the traps, all the events. The settings are also here, which is why in the next few minutes we're going to actually configure the integration through the GUI. You're going to see it's a really quick one-click integration. I'm going to go to Settings, Ecosystem, where the various types of solutions that integrate with DeceptionGrid are managed, Endpoint Protection, and click Carbon Black. The thing that I need to do now outside of clicking the to enable this function is to provide my URL address as well as my API key. This API key, by the way, can be achieved from within the retrieved from within the Carbon Black platform by going into my profile, clicking my profile, and within my profile going to API token, and I just need to copy this text, and in essence I'm done. And now I've got two options. I can either set up an automatic rule, meaning that when a certain type of event generated by DeceptionGrid, each event represents a different type of risk, is sent to Carbon Black, it might trigger an automatic isolation. I might do this for something like infection events where there's a self-spreading, there might be a self-spreader and I want to react immediately. However, I can also choose to not have any automated action take place and simply have the solution present me an event, and within that event the option of isolating the endpoint, which is what I will do in the demo. Once I've got all of that done, I can click Save. And just in order to make sure that everything is configured correctly, I'll also do a test, and it is telling me that the integration is actually set up. So a few seconds of work and the integration is set up. Excellent. Now that we have the integration set up, what we're going to do is to run a mock attack from one of the endpoints managed by Carbon Black, this one specifically. And we're going to attack one of the traps deployed by DeceptionGrid, and we'll show how that creates an alert and how that alert can actually create or cause the isolation of that endpoint and for the attack to stop. First of all, let's quickly customize one of our traps just to make the attack a little more interesting. So currently within the environment, I've got a Windows Server 2016. Let's go in. We can keep that as a Windows Server. However, let's make it into one that's slightly older, make it interesting for the attacker. So I made it into an R2. We can maybe change the name around. And also there's a number of services here. What I will do in a second is customize the FTP service. So I already have a couple of files in it, and why don't we put in authorized users only. Make it a little more interesting. No, that's done. All right, clicking finish. And now we will run our attack. I actually have a remote desktop into that manage endpoint that we've looked at before. And what I'm going to do is actually connect to the FTP service of the trap. So FTP into this IP. Because I configured the trap to validate any kind of user, it doesn't really matter what I put in. I'm connected. Let's see what's in here. So a couple of files are in here. And now let's actually copy an executable into this trap. So that's done. And now let's quit this FTP session. So all done. From an attacker perspective, I just found an FTP service with a weak password, so I'm happy, and I copied the file into it. Let's see what happens within the TrapX security operation console. So I'm going into event analysis, and indeed, as you can see, there is an attack happening, where through the FTP service, and this file, this executable, is being copied. Obviously, if I see something like this, the first thing that I would do is try to isolate it. I could have also, to remind you, set up an automated isolation rule that each time this type of very high-risk event happens, this endpoint will be automatically isolated. But because I've not done that, what I'm going to do now is click on the isolate button. It's asking me if I'm sure. I'm clicking OK, and that's it. The endpoint is isolated. Let's actually validate that also within the Carbon Black console. So let's refresh that. So from online, this console actually shows us that this is in the process of being isolated. So the attack effectively now is over. That attacker can no longer move throughout the network. Now let's assume that having done that, and I've taken the time, now that I've got the time, I can see exactly how the attack progressed, what credentials were being used. I can look at static or dynamic analysis that TrapX can provide of this binary, and I decided to act and clean up this machine, and now I want to restore connection to this machine. What I'm going to do now is click on the restore button, asking me again if I'm sure, which I am, and that's it. Restored. Once again, let's validate that. So as you can see, this was previously isolated. However, when I refresh it, it is back online. So easy, simple, and obviously what I just did manually, I could also, to remind you, set up as an automated rule. So think about something like ransomware trying to spread throughout the network, trying to encrypt files. Within literally milliseconds, it would be fully isolated and the attack would stop. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to download our brochure or contact somebody from TrapX.